Oh, hello children! Welcome to yet another exciting edition of films that are actually rather good and aren't the worst things ever. I am your host as always, Sir Samuel Geoffrey Keeley the 13th, and boys and girls, do we have a magnificent show for you today. Today we shall be discussing the legendary 1960s western The Magnificent Seven, starring Yul Brynner and Stephen McQueen. Through the brilliant use of a wonderful setting and an awe-inspiring score, The Magnificent Seven tells the wonderful story of seven strangers who band together to protect the innocent in the wild, wild west. It is a magnificent film that will truly be admired for years to come. And the chances of such a wonderful film ever being remade is about as likely as a remake of Disney's The Lion King. One moment. Hello? So The Magnificent Seven came out a long time ago, but I haven't made a movie review for a month, and really nothing interesting came out over the month, so I thought I might as well talk about it. It takes place in the good old west and tells the story of seven strangers who band together to protect the town against an evil tyrant. So if you saw my Ben-Hur review, you know I'm not the biggest fan of remakes. I think they're kind of unnecessary and stupid most of the time. But the thing with Ben-Hur is that movie was a masterpiece that should not be touched. The Magnificent Seven, I would definitely say, is a classic, but I wouldn't call it a masterpiece like Ben-Hur. And it would be very hypocritical of me to say that I didn't like this new Magnificent Seven because I like the old one so much, because the original Magnificent Seven is technically a remake. Yeah, the original Magnificent Seven from 1960 is actually a remake of The Seven Samurai, which is considered by many film scholars to be one of the best and most influential films ever made. With that said though, my expectations for this movie weren't exactly high, since the original is a great film and it didn't really need to be rebooted. So basically I walked into the movie all like,
I can't believe you've done this.
But then I walked out of the movie all like,
hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, to my surprise, this movie was actually pretty awesome. Now this movie was directed by Antoine Fuqua, who's made a lot of movies that I've really liked in the past. He directed Training Day, he directed Olympus Has Fallen, and he's going to be directing the Scarface remake. Oh. This is a very good looking movie and a very well directed movie. The action in this movie is the best kind of action where it feels and looks real. There is very little CGI used at all, so you have these huge action set pieces that look fantastic. I was also kind of surprised to see how brutal and violent this movie was. Yeah, the body count in this movie is surprisingly high for a PG-13 rating. But again, it makes the movie feel real. Not real in the sense that this is a realistic movie and stuff that happens in it could actually happen, but real in the sense where you feel like you can get invested in what's going on and you can get invested into this world and with these characters. And also, even though the movie's been out for a long time now, I don't want to spoil anything, but not all the characters might make it. This may not be as big of a happy ending as you might be expecting. Again, no spoilers, but I'm really happy that this movie decided to take a lot of risks with its characters instead of keeping them all alive in some big happy ending and making endless amounts of sequels. Let's talk about the characters for a second. Well, first you got my boy Denzel, who I think is one of the best actors working in Hollywood today. The dude steals the show in pretty much every single movie he's in. He just has a lot of range, and to put it simply, the guy really knows how to act. And then you also got Chris Pratt's character, who's pretty much just Chris Pratt, but you know, more Chris Pratt isn't really a bad thing yet. I just hope he doesn't get typecast as like Chris Pratt as the Chris Pratt character. I hope that doesn't happen, but for this movie, it worked. But possibly my favorite character is Billy, played by Byung-hun Lee. If you don't recognize who he is, he was one of the two good parts of the G.I. Joe movies. Yeah, he pretty much kicks all the butt in this movie. There are also two characters named Vasquez and Red Harvest who were kind of interesting, but if I'm totally honest, they're not really given all that much to do. I'd say they're definitely the least developed characters in the entire movie. And then one of the more interesting characters was Vincent D'Onofrio's. His character talked in a really high-pitched and strange voice, and they don't really talk about it. It was interesting. I didn't dislike it. It was just kind of weird. Ethan Hawke was also really good in this movie. His character had some interesting backstory and some interesting traits. And that's another thing I should touch on for a quick second, that there is very, very little exposition in this movie. It doesn't waste your time at all. It gets straight to the point. However, it does manage to give you expositional details without having to have this whole scene where you go, oh, I'm from so-and-so, and this is what happened to me. No, it doesn't do any of that. It cleverly weaves them into the story. The villain is pretty standard. He's not really all that complex or fascinating, but he's serviceable. But on a whole, the characters are really likable, and I managed to get invested with pretty much all of them. And yeah, that's about it. I honestly don't have that much more to say about this movie. And it's not because I saw this movie a month ago and forgot everything about it, which I did, but it's just that this movie is wonderfully simple. It's not a complex and serious drama, it just wants you to have fun, but it also wants you to get invested in its characters. Really, to sum it up, The Magnificent Seven is a great example of how to do remakes right. Still, I'm hoping for original content, and I really hope we don't keep getting an endless cycle of remakes. I mean, what are they gonna remake next? Aladdin?
All around me are familiar faces, worn out